In this video, we're going to go over intertidal zonation on the rocky shore. On the seashore, there is an area that is exposed and above the sea level at low tide, and underwater when it is high tide. This area is called the intertidal zone. The intertidal zone varies greatly depending on the habitat. The intertidal region on a sandy beach or in a mangrove swamp, or on a rocky shore, greatly differ. The rocky shore, because it has a solid surface for organisms to attach to, in addition to the varying physical and biological stresses in this area, creates horizontal zonation of species. The rocky intertidal can be divided into 4 general zones: the spray zone, the upper intertidal zone, the mid-intertidal zone, and the lower intertidal zone. Just below the lower intertidal zone is the subtidal zone. Often in the intertidal, an organism's upper limit is determined by the physical stresses, such as the organism's ability to cope with desiccation or temperature fluctuations, whereas an organism's lower limit on the rocky shore is more determined by the biological factors, such as predation and competition. The spray zone, also known as the Supraliteral Zone, is the highest zone where marine organisms are found on the rocky shore. This zone is mostly dry and only kept wet by waves splashing water up into this area. Organisms in this area are sparse. Organisms in the spray zone are mostly exposed to physical stresses, such as air exposure and desiccation. They do not have as much biological stresses, such as competition for space, as not as many species are able to inhabit the zone. Because of these physical stresses, organisms that are found in this zone often have a protective covering to prevent desiccation. Organisms that inhabit this area include barnacles, limpets, and periwinkles, which all have hard protective shells and casings to conserve moisture. The next zone down the rocky shore is the upper intertidal zone. This is the zone that is only covered by water during high tide. Organisms in this zone are subject to high levels of both biological and physical stresses. This zone is a more diverse zone than the spray zone, and in turn there is more competition and predation between species. Organisms in this zone are also subject to potential desiccation, exposure to air when it is not high tide, as well as the effects of this zone getting buffeted by waves as the tide goes in and out over the day. This zone is dominated by barnacles. They are well adapted to the physical elements of this zone, and well protected from predators such as shore crabs and shorebirds by their protective casing. Other organisms found in this zone include periwinkles, limpets, chitons, shore crabs, and marine snails. In addition, algae can be found in this zone, but it is usually limited to green algae as it can better handle long exposure to sunlight. The next zone down the rocky shore is the middle intertidal zone. This is the zone that is regularly covered by water. It is covered and uncovered twice a day by the tides. This zone is even more diverse than the upper intertidal zone, as it has more time submerged and less time exposed to the elements. Biological stresses are more of a factor here. The more diverse the species and abundance of those species means more competition for space and food, as well as more species that can predate on others. Physical elements such as desiccation and air exposure are still factors when it is low tide, but not as much due to the reduced time the zone is not covered by the tide. Organisms in this zone are still exposed to wave action though, so adaptations for strong attachment is still found in species in this zone. Organisms that inhabit this area include barnacles, sponges, algae, mussels, sea stars, sea anemones, shore crabs, and gastropods. Within the middle intertidal, due to the pressure of competition and predation on the species found in this zone, you start to see some of the lower limits of species on the shore. A key example is seen in barnacles. They are mostly found at the higher parts of this zone. The lower limit is determined usually by the presence of mussels. Mussels are more prone to desiccation than barnacles and cannot as easily inhabit the higher levels of this zone. Simultaneously, the barnacles have less competition for space being higher up the shore. Where mussels attach themselves, they end up suffocating the barnacles underneath, limiting the barnacles' ability to be in the same area. The next and lowest zone of the rocky shore is the lower intertidal zone. This is the zone that is usually submerged and is only exposed at low tides. This zone is even more diverse, now able to host an array of algae and marine organisms such as small fish. The main stresses in this zone come from biological stresses due to the greater diversity of species in this zone, such as competition and predation. There are not as many physical stresses in this zone as there is very little exposure to the air, heat, and wave action that occur at higher levels up the shore. A key feature of the zone is the presence of brown algae. Other organisms present include encrusting sponges, shore crabs, sea urchins, gastropods, sea cucumbers, abalone, and small fish. Just under the intertidal zone is the subtidal zone. This zone is very rarely exposed and is mentioned because many predator species live in this zone, such as octopus and larger fish that predate on organisms living in the low intertidal zone. Thank you for watching. If you want to support this channel, please subscribe and check out more of my videos.